I'm back, and we are going to talk even more about .NET MAUI. So this is kind of an intro talk. I'm going to show you how to get started, and we're also going to do a bit of a deep dive into what was actually going on with that amazing podcasts app that we showed in the keynote earlier. So if you're joining us live, hopefully you joined us for the keynote too. If you're joining us in the recorded version of this talk, I'll make sure I cover everything so you don't have to go back and watch it, but it was awesome. All my friends were there, so you should check it out. Let's take a look at what came out yesterday with .NET MAUI Preview 10. So my colleague David Ortnow, another program manager on the .NET MAUI team, wrote a wonderful blog highlighting all this stuff, but here's it kind of condensed into a slide for you. The best way to use the latest and greatest .NET MAUI is with Visual Studio 17.1, which is the preview branch right now. So yesterday we shipped Visual Studio 2022 general availability. And it's also shipping the preview version that came out yesterday. So all of that's up there on the visualstudio.com site. Grab preview 1, and that is where you're going to have the best experience with MAUI. So I'm not going to spend too long on slides because I promised on Twitter I will get to as many questions as possible. So let's take a look at how all this magic happens. We're going to start right here in the Visual Studio installer. So this is 17.1, preview 1, right up here you can see it. I have my giant purple cursor from Scott because he also used this machine, so that's been fun. And if I click this mobile development with .NET workload, and if you're a Xamarin developer, this is the same workload you used before with Xamarin. You can see I have some optional components here in Telecode, Xamarin, and now in 17.1, I have the .NET MAUI preview checkbox. So that's going to grab all the latest bits for you. Just check it off. There's no command line anything. You don't have to do the workload install. You don't have to use MAUI check if you've heard of that tool. You can just kind of go right for it in the IDE. It's very simple. And then that will install everything. And that also installs all of the native development tools you'll need to do your Android development and iOS and Mac and all blah, blah, blah. I would also check off the Universal Windows Platform Development box if I were you, because that is how you get all the cool XAML hot reload stuff. So that's when you change your XAML and it reflects kind of in the running app. So with the .NET MAUI workload, I still have my podcast app open, but before we look at that, let's go to the new project dialog. And if I could use this mouse, it would really help. New project, and then I'm going to search for MAUI. Nice. And I have 3 templates I can choose from. So the first one is just your standard old .NET MAUI app. It looks very, very similar to the website that Dan Roth showed, the Min Blazor site, if you watched his talk, which was right before this. We also have a MAUI Blazor app, so that includes kind of the basic building blocks for pulling in Blazor and Razor code into your .NET MAUI app if you want to do the hybrid app. And then we also have a class library template, which we're not going to look at too much today, but it's just building a library with .NET 6 for .NET MAUI. Let's close out of this. And then let's go take a look, a bit of a deeper look at the podcasts app we showed earlier. So one of the greatest things about .NET MAUI is that everything's kind of in this single project. And I saw a lot of buzz on Twitter about how excited people are for, in particular, being able to use SVGs in your MAUI app. So this is totally new if you're a Xamarin developer. You've always had to use PNGs or other types of images and make sure that they're all the right scales and resolutions for any possible device your users could be pulling out of their pockets to look at your app with. But with SVGs, it just works. It just scales for you. And then we also have a PNG in here. So the good news is if you don't have SVG versions of things, you can still stick PNGs in. You can always go into your platform-specific folders as well and create a resources folder here. And in there, add different images you might want with different scales and sizes. So for example, if you're putting screenshots of your app in your app, right? The screenshot on iOS is going to look different than the screenshot on Android. So if you need to put those specific images in for just that platform, you can do that in the platform-specific subfolders here. Something else that I didn't get to show this morning in this demo was that this is using all the great new C# features that you saw Mads talk about and Maria talk about. My personal favorite is global usings. This takes so many lines out of my projects. I mean, look at this. All the MAUI, like the namespaces for the actual project folders, my models and view models and all that stuff, plus the MAUI and the extensions namespaces, all of that's just in this folder. So if I look at my view model here, there's no usings. And I just have this semicolon, so nothing is indented. So it's way, way, way easier to read and use, and it's super clean, makes my life a lot easier when I'm demoing it and also when I'm writing it. So that's good. Yeah, so that is kind of the whip around of the code I actually showed. We looked at a couple pages. Let's run this here and let's talk about the target selector. So when you do the File New MAUI project, it's going to give you all of the target frameworks we support by default. So you're going to have .NET 6 Android, iOS, Mac Catalyst, and Windows, as long as you have the Windows, the WinApp SDK stuff that you need installed. And that'll all work perfectly. We have these little things here, use MAUI and a single project, which just lets the compiler know that this is a MAUI app using single project, so not to expect different platform heads. The great news is if you are upgrading your Xamarin.Forms app to .NET MAUI, we are going to have upgrade assistant support. We've been working on it. We have some demos of it on the internet somewhere, but it's not quite out yet. You can actually keep those expanded out app heads if you'd prefer. So you don't have to use single project. We're not going to force you into anything, but it's pretty good. So I would suggest using it, but you don't have to. You can just set this to false and you'll be good to go. So my target framework selector, it actually pulls from in here what I have in my project file to populate this list right here, my frameworks list. So Android, iOS, Mac Catalyst, and Windows. And let's start with Windows again, just like we did in the keynote. And it gives me the right targets here for what I am, trying to run this app on. So we'll go for Windows machine. Give it a second. It's going to load up. Boop, 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 boop. It's thinking. It's doing all the things. You can see that we still have a bunch of warnings in this app. The great news is that if you actually do want to get the code for this app, it will be out either later this week or early next week. We're open sourcing it. It's all going to be on GitHub. It's just not there yet. So you'll be able to check it out and see exactly what we did in a little bit. But yeah, this is the app. And we have full XAML hot reload and .NET hot reload support here. So, I can click around. I can turn on dark mode, all the things. We'll go back actually. Right now, the listen together component is hidden in my shell. So I'll go to my page here. I'll go to my desktop shell. And we'll talk about why I have two shells in a second. But we'll uncomment out this. See if I remember my hotkeys, and we'll make sure that popped right up. Yeah, listen together, right there. So the component's not loading right now. That's okay. Oh, it did load. And the room that Dan and I were in the keynote is still open, so that's good. But yeah, that is just how easy it is to hot reload your XAML, literally adding and removing top level components from your navigation right there while the app's running. And then let's look at .NET hot reload. So I'll go into, let's do the settings page, and let's do the settings page view model. So you saw me flip it to dark mode because dark mode is the best mode. And it's just this little toggle that flips it off and on. But with .NET Hot Reload, I can actually test kind of all the different changes I'd want to do, even if it's in my view model. It doesn't have to be in the code behind of a page. It doesn't have to be like in an API or anything or in a service. It can be in my view model while the app is running. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to comment this whole thing out so I can't even change it back to light mode if I wanted to, because like I said, dark mode is the best. I'm going to hit the little hot reload button. Boop, boop, boop. Let the magic happen. Wait for that to pop back up. And it told the Windows app, hey, this toggle doesn't do anything anymore. And that's that. That is .NET Hot Reload. Just that easy. I know you have seen it all over the place if you've been following along with the Visual Studio launch or the .NET Conf content from today. There's truly hot reload everywhere. It is amazing. Fire emojis everywhere. It's so good. But yeah, it works for MAUI, works for Windows, works for Android, all the things. Speaking of Android, let's talk a little bit more about what happened this morning with the Windows subsystem for Linux, or Android. Oh my goodness. The amount of times I've done that, it's all good. So, like I said, with the installer, it's going to install everything you need for native Android development, including giving you these little buttons to open Android device managers, SDK managers, log file reading and all that stuff, and of course the command prompt. So this is the ADB command prompt. The Windows subsystem for Android, you can install from the Microsoft Store. It's also going to give you this Amazon App Store which is how you can go in and download existing apps that you can run on your Windows machine from the Amazon App Store. So what I did was I installed this one, Flight Tracker 24. It's very simple. I like it a lot. This is actually a native Android app right now running on top of Windows. It looks just like a Windows app. It's almost difficult to tell the difference, but you can tell because it's using the Android styling for its buttons. So Android kind of by default, depending on the version, likes all caps buttons. Not my personal preference, but works great for them, and it's a nice way to tell the difference between if I'm running a Windows or an Android app. So I opened this, and when I opened this app, it actually spun up the Windows subsystem for Android. So I can go into the Settings app, make sure that developer mode right here is toggled on, and this is saying that devices on the same private network can come into this. So that's great. I don't even have to be on this specific thing. I would recommend setting it to continuous just because that means if I close that flight tracker app accidentally, it's not gonna like close my Android subsystem, my Windows subsystem for Android altogether. And then you might have to hit a refresh here, but overall you can just copy my IP address and then I'm just gonna type ADB connect, paste. And so I'm already connected. So it's gonna say already connected. Awesome, everything works great. And then I can go change my target framework here, boop, back to Android, and it pops right up. Of course, this is not my only option. So I also could create an emulator. I could plug in an actual physical Android device. I could plug in my phone. So you can still do all the different things that you did before, but especially for folks like me who are running an older machine, this machine's brand new and wonderful, so an emulator would run great, but like my laptop at home or on the plane, not great for my emulators right now. This is perfect. So I'll just hit play, give it a second, and it's gonna spin right up. I mentioned this earlier and I'll mention it again. It is part of the Amazon App Store. So you do not have Google Play App Store APIs. So if you're using something like, I think an example a lot of folks gave was like using the specific Google Play Maps APIs. Those things aren't gonna work in the Windows subsystem for Android, but you can still launch your app and play around with it. Just those components aren't gonna be able to hit the API, which means this is still a pretty nifty way to get things started, test things out into hot reload and all the things. Yeah. And so I still have a lot of the same tooling I have on Windows here. I have my live visual tree, so I can do my XAML hot reload and kind of investigate what's going on with my UI and go to different places. I have my live preview window still pops up. We don't just yet in this particular release have support for the Windows subsystem for Android with live preview, but we will because it's awesome. It does work with Android emulators, so if you're running an emulator, you can use live preview there. So let's talk about why I have two different shell files, those navigation description things. So I have my desktop shell, but in here, my Android app, these are actually bottom tabs. So on the Windows app and on the web app, they're both on the left. The Discover, subscriptions, listen, all that stuff is on the left, just like in a hamburger menu type thing. But in here, they're tabs on the bottom. And I can see that in my live visual tree on the side here. So I'm gonna click this to bring me to where this is defined, which is in my mobile shell file. And instead of here, I have shell content, that's all it is, which is that side. And I have a flyout header and all that stuff, so it describes my always open flyout on the side. I have tabs, just a tab bar with tabs. And it's the same icons, same title and everything that I was using before. It's data binding to the same page and pages, but it's just a tab instead. So that's a really nice way to kind of give these custom experiences to your users depending on the platform they're on, if they're on desktop or mobile or iOS or Android or whatever. So let's do some C# hot reloading. Let's go fix that thing I commented out. I'll let me set myself back to different themes now. So we'll uncomment this, hit save. Go find my fire emoji, hit that, give it a second to think. Everything lights back up, click on it, go to my settings page, and now I should be able to turn off dark mode, just like that. So yeah, so you can see I'm super productive. I am using the same tools and buttons and code and things that I use with the Windows app and with the Android app. And it makes it really easy for me to context switch and kind of test my app on all the different platforms I might be deploying it onto. Yeah, and like I said earlier, this is only half the magic. Before I flip over to my Mac, I do want to show you that I can target, oh, gotta stop this. I can actually target iOS from Windows. So I can see all the target platforms and frameworks here, but I can't deploy a Mac Catalyst app on my Windows device because it's not a Mac device. So it can't run a Mac desktop app, which makes sense. That being said, there are some ways I can handle iOS. So I'm gonna click it. I don't have anything set up to demo, but I wanted to show you that there are 3 different options. There's remote devices, which means I could plug my iPhone into a MacBook, pair that Mac over the internet. There's a little button, pair to Mac right here, does it all for you, as long as you're on the same network, and then debug it to my device plugged into that Mac. I could use a remote simulator, which is the same thing. I'm paired to my Mac again over the internet, and then I have a remote simulator that pops up and shows me a little window in Windows, even though it's actually running on my Mac. Or you could do my favorite and the easiest thing, which is use something we call, used to be Xamarin Hot Restart, and now it's just Hot Restart. More hot things, hot reload, hot restart. And that is when I actually take my iPhone, I plug it right into this PC, and I can deploy to it from Visual Studio. Don't need my Mac, it can go in my bag, I can close it, doesn't need to be on the internet, anything. And the only requirements for that are that I have an Apple developer account and I have iTunes installed on the machine. That's all you need to do. So it can communicate with the iPhone, it will deploy it right in, and then I can, have my iPhone right here and swipe around on it and edit my code, do my hot reloads, all from Visual Studio for Windows. So there's plenty of demos for that online, which is why I don't want to spend too much time talking about it today. But go check that out if that's something that you think you'd be interested in, or if you don't have a Mac yet and you want to get that 3rd platform out on Visual Studio for Windows. All right, we're switching over to the Mac. Boop, 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 magic. You can tell this is my Mac because it has all the stickers. All my Xamagons, great stuff. I need some new .NET stickers, but we'll get there. There's a lot of amazing ones in the store I saw Jamie and Scott talk about, so go check that out. And let's look at Visual Studio for Mac. So we do not have MAUI support yet. It is currently in progress. It is something we are working on every day. But there is a new Visual Studio for Mac preview out, and you can, of course, open a solution file in Visual Studio for Mac and kind of use it as a text editor. Some things do work, like I can see my targets here. I can see all the iOS simulators I deploy to. I can see my Mac. I can see the Android emulator I have created, because a lot of that stuff is the same that you would have seen with Xamarin too. So those tools still exist. It's just a matter of wiring everything up correctly. And this is the same solution. I've got, my global using still. I've got all my beautiful C# features. I've got my pages and blah, 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 blah. And then one thing I wanted to mention is that there is a new Git experience in Visual Studio for Mac, which is something we have heard so many requests for, and I'm really, really excited to be able to show it. So you can see where I've made changes. I can stage them, I can make my commits, I can pull and push, all from right in VS Mac. It's brand new. It's modeled very much after the Visual Studio for Windows experience, so it's hopefully familiar to you if you're switching between the 2 IDEs. There's a lot in Visual Studio for Mac. It's going to be running on .NET 6 soon. It's going to have native M1 support soon. It was completely rebuilt from the ground up with a fully native UI stack, so it's super snappy. It's got right to left text support. It's got really, really just a modern and Mac-like look and feel while still staying true to what you want to see in a Visual Studio. So I can see my view windows have actually been completely reorganized to look and be organized in the way that they are on Windows. So instead of trying to spend forever finding what window you're looking for, you can do that all in VS Mac. So let's run this again. Boop. So what I did actually to build this before was I went and I built this components project. Oh, pop away. I built this components project from the command line. And then I built this app itself from the command line just using .NET Build. And then I gave it the path. That's it. That's all I had to do. It builds it all for me. Command line is magic. I love it. And then I can start and stop it from inside of Visual Studio for Mac. If I want to make code changes and stuff, I am going to want to rebuild it from the command line right now, because VS Mac, we're still working on picking up the proper changes so that we can redeploy it. But yeah, boom, up and running. And I can click around and interact, all the things. You've seen this app 100 times now, so I'm not going to bore you with that. And then I can stop. I can go in, I can switch my target. And so because I have a library project right now, it's actually going to ask me to rebuild everything here, and I'm not going to make you watch me rebuild this podcast app. But if you don't have a library connected, you can switch between targets in VS Mac and just debug on the different ones. So that's a really quick way to get things working. Also, your XAML hot reload will work. So have fun with that. And if it doesn't work, file a bug. As we always say, help report a problem is our favorite place. Go on in there, let us know. And so that's really good to have. Your C# or your .NET hot reload hasn't come over to VS Mac yet, but that's another thing that is in progress. And like I said, this is a preview version of Visual Studio for Mac as well. It runs side by side with Visual Studio 2019 for Mac. So you can have both this and VS 2019 installed, and it won't screw anything up. It's got its own little world it lives in. So don't worry too much about that. I would highly recommend trying it out. So, okay, I have a little bit under 10 minutes left. I do want to give it a few minutes for questions, but before that, I would like to pop once more back over to my window so we can look at a few more slides. Boop, boop, boop. Let me open this. Make sure this is the right stuff. So let's talk about how to get started. You can do get.NET 6, that website, if you want to. But for MAUI, all you have to do is just download Visual Studio 2022 Preview. And then that's the last link here. And then check off the .NET MAUI box, check off UWP so you get those XAML hot reload development tools, and everything else you need was just going to get installed for you. The other one thing I wanted to call out, I mentioned this earlier, I think, is that you should try out the Upgrade Assistant if you have .NET 5 or .NET Framework apps or anything that you want to bring over to .NET 5 or .NET 6. It is now stable, so go for it. We are going to be building .NET MAUI support into the Upgrade Assistant, and there is some basic functionality there. So try it out, let us know. We're going to publish more blogs and docs about testing out our branch of the Upgrade Assistant kind of throughout the early new year, early 2022. Can't believe we're there. So yeah, we'll have more info to come, but definitely get familiar with it with other apps you have that aren't Xamarin.Forms or .NET MAUI so that you can give us feedback on what you want to see there.